Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my review for the Killing Eve Season 2 finale episode. Alright guys, so I got a chance to see this finale early. Wow, what an episode for the finale of Season 2. So this review will be, I think, a couple hours earlier than the episode actually airs. So of course, spoilers, of course, for the episode if you have not seen it. I know most people probably watch this after the episode officially airs. But anyways, just want to get that out to begin. So, crazy finale, and I kind of regret the review that I gave last week for last week's episode, because I said then I got high expectations for this finale, right? Last episode I was a bit disappointed with. Some of the things just, I don't know, I was expecting more, I guess, from it, but this episode blew me away, just as the Season 1 finale did, and I'd love to get your guys' thoughts, of course, on the episode. What did you think of it, and what do you think of that insane ending, and where do you think they're going to go for next season now, because of that ending? But I also want to hear from you guys in which finale do you think is better, and I'm really torn on this. I'm not really sure, but it's the Season 1 or this one. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that if you want to share your thoughts. So, anyways, if you enjoyed the review, please like and consider subscribing to the channel. Would really appreciate that, guys. And so, yeah. Let's go through a little bit of a recap of the episode. We'll highlight some of the most important moments of this one, or at least in my eyes, the most important. Then we'll get to my rating, favorite character, and some more overall thoughts of how this ending is going to shape the next season, because we know we're getting to Season 3. Like, it's been officially renewed at this point, so it's just a matter of time, I guess, until we're there at Season 3. But this season went really, really fast. Honestly, it's been 2 months, but honestly, it seemed more like 2 weeks for me. It seems like every few days a new episode's out, So, anyways, really enjoyed Season 2. But we'll talk more about Season 2 just overall and in generalities towards the end of the recap, of course. But, alright, so let's start this one off. And we do start off with a bang for this episode really, really quickly, right? So after Villanelle sees Aaron's computer room, she discovers that he's had other women murdered, or at least some other people. But I assume that it was mostly women on the computer there. We only see the one woman being murdered, right? And basically, he has these cameras set up in the hotel, and they capture this woman getting murdered on camera, right? And so this is kind of an odd thing, of course, and this also kind of sparks Villanelle to kind of rethink things, right? I think she had an idea, and I talked about this last episode too, that Aaron was watching her because of the way she took that microphone out of the bread, if you remember last week, where she kind of, looked away from where the camera was and all that. So she had an idea that Aaron was watching her, but I don't think she knew quite why, right? And so this kind of confirms it to her. So then she goes to see him at breakfast the next morning, obviously just plays it off. She says, slept like a baby, right? Of course, kind of deceiving here already with Villanelle, of course, right? So then Aaron shows her the next potential buyer on his computer screen, and it is Raymond. So I actually really enjoyed this, and to be honest, I was thinking to myself, going into this episode, I'm like, Raymond was such a big part of earlier in the season. I mean, I think it was episode 2, 3, and 4, something like that. He was like a big part in those. And so I'm like, oh, where is he? I wonder if they're going to bring him back. And of course they do in this episode. And he had a great role in this. So anyways, right when she sees Raymond, right away, she uses the safe word gentleman to notify Eve back at the hotel. And so we saw in the little previously on segment that Constantine tells her the safe word is gentleman. I think I talked about that last week as well. And so Eve, of course, recognizing that right away. Meanwhile, though, we see back to Eve at the hotel. Hugo leaves, I guess, to phone Jess in the hallway from the hotel room, and all of a sudden Eve hears a gunshot from the hallway. Hugo has been shot. Wow. So, I have to say, I think I predicted this one, although we don't know, I think, quite yet whether he is dead or not. But right afterwards, we see Eve then hide under her bed from the shooter, who comes in and luckily gets a phone call and leaves very quickly. It's also a pretty small room, and so when he comes in, I think he sees pretty much all the rooms, right, when he comes in. And so I think when he comes in, he doesn't see anything immediate, and so he just kind of leaves, right? And whether they were specifically looking for Eve, I don't think so. I think they were just, getting rid of whoever was there, and that's what it was. So anyways, she's able to hide under the bed, and of course this was in the teaser, and this was like, where is she, what is she hiding from? And all of a sudden, this chaos ensues here very early on in the episode. So then we see that she goes out to the hallway after the guy leaves, sees Hugo in very bad condition, bleeding out very quickly, rapidly, and it looks like he got shot in the chest, somewhere in the chest area, and he said that he was playing dead while the guy left or something like that on the ground. So anyway, so then Eve leaves him. She leaves him up there. She goes down to the desk, and nobody is there to help her. No workers are there. And whether that is just a coincidence or these other killers, either killed the staff or made them leave or something like that, right? Anyways, it's not looking good for Hugo at this point, who's currently just lying on the ground, bleeding out at this point. So again, we don't know, or at least that it wasn't confirmed that he died. So we'll have to see if Carolyn and her team, when she came here later on, whether they were able to save him or not, and whether he already bled out. So it's interesting. And I have to say, last episode I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a big death. I mean, Carolyn could go, Hugo could go, and it ends up being Hugo. So, again, we'll have to see whether he actually survives or not. But I'm really not sure. I don't even want to hazard a guess because I'm really not sure. Even Eve asks Carolyn a little bit later about Hugo and says, is he all right? And she just kind of ignores him, ignores her. So I'm wondering if that means that he's dead. So anyways, it is what it is. So then we see Eve gets an idea of putting on the worker's uniform from the closet at the front desk, where she pretends to work as one of the workers when one of the men come in. That he asks her out for sushi the night, for dinner the night or later that night. Just a really funny scene there, really great. So. And this is kind of the first time I've ever seen Eve in disguise. We always see Villanelle playing these kind of roles and characters, and this is the first time that we get Eve doing that. And we do get a lot of parallels with Eve and Villanelle in this episode, of course, right? So she uses the disguise then to get into Villanelle's hotel a little bit down the street, and when she walks in the room with Villanelle and Aaron recognizes her right away and says, Eve Pilastri, right? So... And I love it. She also grabs the letter opener from outside on the table. So that was pretty funny as well. And he, of course, acknowledges that right away, right? That she's holding this letter opener to defend herself, right? So anyways, right when he recognizes her, a little bit of a surprise here, where Villanelle basically exposes herself to him, admits that obviously she knows Eve, and she just kind of totally breaks character as Billy in this scene, which was a bit surprising to me, because the whole plan so far was her putting on this character in front of him, and but she knows, I think, the circumstance at this point, and obviously Eve knows the circumstances as well, with that safe word being used, right? So after Villanelle reveals that she's seen the videos, Aaron offers to have her work for him and be the one doing the murders, right? To be the one doing the murders. And, he says, you can have everything. And he also says, neither of us will be bored anymore, which I thought was a really good line, and makes sense from his standpoint, because that's what they were just talking about at the end of last episode, and both of them being psychopaths, or at least having those psychopathic tendencies, and so for him to say that is actually, you would think pretty impactful for Villanelle, but Eve's also there, right? So obviously he then asks Villanelle to kill Eve and says that he can watch it. So that was where basically the big reveal, I think, or the confirmation that he is a psychopath, and that he has those tendencies. It seems as though he has an obsession with watching these killings. Now, killing of women, I'm not exactly sure. Could just be killing of both sexes, male and female. But there is some sort of obsession or fascination there with Aaron. And so he has Villanelle to kill Eve as kind of her first job while working for him. So, of course, I love this. This is just vintage Killing Eve right now in this scene, where after a few moments, Villanelle picks up the knife on the table and then goes right, walks right behind Aaron and slits Aaron's throat, right there instead. Of course, right? Of course. She's not going to kill Eve. So anyways, and then of course she drags him in front of the mirror and makes him watch himself bleed out in the mirror because he said he wanted to watch. So a really awesome kill here, and very satisfying because Aaron has been, obviously, they've been setting him up as kind of the antagonist this season, and he's been really, a really great antagonist, I guess, if you want to say that, the past couple episodes. So, yeah, very satisfying death here to see him watch himself bleed out in the mirror was really great. So, of course she wouldn't kill Eve, right? Of course. And I didn't have any doubt really there. I knew that she wasn't going to go for Eve, but it was still a little bit, building that tension because we weren't sure what Aaron was going to do in that scene and how he was going to react. But it was a really great scene. So they kill Aaron like 10 minutes into the episode here. And again, start off with a bang, right? So in this scene, though, Eve is devastated at this point that Villanelle just killed Aaron because she knows they will now be in a lot of trouble with Carolyn because the strict orders were do not, make sure she doesn't kill anybody, especially Aaron at this point. So, of course, this then comes back in the next scene. So Eve then heads back to the hotel to get the recordings of Aaron. When Hugo and her were able to get the recordings of that deal and the weapon and all that stuff, right? So she tells Villanelle that this mission can't just be for nothing, right? People have already died for this. I guess she's referring to Hugo, but again, we don't have any confirmation whether he died or not. But anyways, so she's making this case that they need the recordings, after all. I mean, if they're going to get nothing else, they need the recordings to be able to, get some people involved with it now that Aaron's dead and try to kind of bring down the whole thing, right? So that this weapon doesn't get sold to other people. And so, at this point, she gets back to the room to find everything is cleared out. Crazy stuff, right? And she's only been gone for like half an hour or so, right? Like, maybe even shorter than that, right? So anyway, so she comes back to the room, everything's cleared out, and then Carolyn knocks on the door, and she is there to talk. So this was really where the whole twist was revealed of this entire plot line or this entire story of the last few episodes. And I thought it was really, really great. So basically, Carolyn reveals that it was all a setup all along and that they would, that they wanted Aaron Peel dead the entire time. Killing him was the actual plan or was the conclusion of the mission, right? So that he could not sell the weapon. And it makes sense. I mean, if you're not going to kill Aaron, you're going to try to, put him in prison. Well, this other stuff, someone is going to get a hold of that and sell it still, right? But with Aaron, the whole thing kind of dies. And so, killing him was ultimately the right solution or the appropriate conclusion, I guess, to the mission. And also, the next thing is that they would cover their tracks because they would say Villanelle was simply just working for the 12, right? She wasn't working for MI6, right? And that, in doing so, right, it's just a random killing. She just, found Aaron Peel and she killed him, right? And then they end up winning too because now Aaron Peel is dead and the mission is complete. So a really interesting twist here, and it makes a lot of sense from Carolyn's standpoint. So essentially, Eve was used as a pawn to see through the mission of killing Aaron Peel, seeing it out. So it really, and she had no idea, right? And she thought this whole time, because of that fascination or obsession with Villanelle and that relationship this whole time, she's played. She was completely played here, and and Carolyn giving her the chance of bringing Villanelle on board, working with her, and all this stuff was all just for to see out that Aaron Peel died, and that Villanelle was the one to kill him. And of course, those orders of saying she mustn't kill anybody. Obviously, Carolyn and them knew that if they said that to her, Villanelle was mostly likely going to kill someone. And so it ended up working really, really well. So I pretty much predicted this, I have to say, as it made sense to essentially kill two birds with one stone with this mission. I thought they would maybe even bring down Villanelle and possibly even kill her or try to kill her. And that's, I guess, what ends up happening, really. But it wasn't really MI6 that was behind that. It was more Raymond and the 12, right? But anyways, it would just look bad if Villanelle was actually working for MI6 alongside them, I knew that that was just too unrealistic at this point. And I had a feeling that they're going to twist this somehow, that Villanelle is not actually going to be working for them, and then they're going to try to take down Villanelle as well. So I guess I'll take half credit for it, because of course Villanelle does survive and, doesn't get caught in jail or anything like that by the end of it, or get arrested, right? But I knew that there'd be some sort of twist here. It just makes sense, right? So Eve is obviously clearly disappointed with Carolyn here, and even refuses then to go home with her. Even go back with her, because obviously that trust factor is broken. Although, let's be honest, Eve was the one who started this, bad relationship with Carolyn, and really broke her trust when she went after Villanelle in episode 3. So, I mean, it really kind of deteriorated relationship here with Carolyn and Eve this season, and this is just kind of the epitome of that relationship, and that kind of falling out between the two. So as a result, she's left alone with Villanelle to get out of this mess in Rome. Carolyn leaves it up to her, right? She leaves it up to her, and I believe that was in the synopsis of the episode, right? Carolyn leaves Eve's mission in her hands, or something like that. And that's exactly what happens here, right? So then we see Villanelle finds out then from Constantine that he asked Raymond and the 12 not to kill her before she killed Aaron Peel. So this was an interesting scene. So we see Villanelle basically looking for some cars to go pick up Eve in from the hotel, and try to drive out of there, right? Because these men are still following. And so she's looking for these cars, and then of course one of them beeps, and then she sees Constantine standing up on the stairs. I really like the direction here in this scene too, with Constantine kind of up on the stairs, and she has to walk up to him. I just felt like that meant even a little bit more than just the physical, her walking up. I felt like it kind of symbolized something, where Constantine was kind of on that higher ground than Villanelle. But anyways, so we essentially learn that Constantine was more loyal to Carolyn than Villanelle, and essentially sold her out. And then we see later on in the episode that Constantine is given the address to his family from Carolyn afterwards. So it was all a big deal between Carolyn and Constantine. He ends up picking his family over Villanelle. So we get this little scene here with Villanelle basically disappointed in him that he picked his family over her, and thought that she was more important than family to him. Which is an interesting thing, but we also see here too that once she says that, and once Constantine, admits to her that, no, you're not, you're not more important than my family, right? She kind of changes there, and we see that she didn't actually really feel sad. She was just kind of disappointed in him, more like. And we see that almost very similar reaction in the end of the episode with Eve. So it really is kind of foreshadowing what ends up happening here for sure. So anyways, all of this was basically a setup, and Eve and Villanelle were at the center of it. So they pretty much got played. And Carolyn, Constantine, everyone around them could see that relationship and that attachment between the two of them. And so they just used them to get what they wanted here in this scene, or in this episode, I guess, in this sequence. And they were able to get Aaron Peel. He's dead, and that's what it is, right? They were able to kind of pit each other in this kind of situation at the center of this, and use them both as pawns. I mean, Eve mainly, but Villanelle too. Constantine totally put her up to this, right? Totally kind of made this deal with Carolyn to get his family, if he would offer Villanelle and do this whole kind of convoluted plan to get her in there. But I did like here that Constantine did say, I told you not to go, right? I told you not to come. And he did. I mean, he really did. He told Villanelle before she left not to go to Rome. And so he knew, and he actually does feel for her because he said that to her. Of course, she doesn't listen because Eve was also going. So again, really, they knew exactly what these two would do when faced with this opportunity. And they both took it, right? They both took it. So, anyways, Villanelle says that she will find Constantine and his family for doing this. So I hope that doesn't happen again, but we'll have to see. Anyways, that was a big thing in season 1, right? The finale, she shoots him, right? And, now he's still alive, of course. But then we see she gets in the car and waits outside the hotel for Eve. But after a few minutes pass by and Eve doesn't show up there at the car as she's supposed to, Villanelle takes the gun from the dash there, or from the compartment, and goes inside the hotel walks up the stairs to find, of course, Raymond. Raymond makes an appearance as he's standing outside Eve's room at the hotel with an axe in hand. Constantine was right? All along, Constantine was right. He even tells her in that scene before, just leave, right? Don't go back for Eve, just leave now. And also says there, too, that he told Raymond and the 12, and they agreed to let her live at this point. And so she could have gotten in the car, she could have drove off, she would have been fine. But, of course, she has to go back for Eve. And, you know, she should have just left. The 12 knew that she would come back for her, right? They knew that that she would end up eventually returning to the hotel to go and get Eve, and played right into their hands, right? But it is Villanelle. So anyways, Villanelle talks to Raymond for a few moments before he sets the axe down on the ground, which was kind of a key thing here, right? He sets the axe down, offers to play a game with her to find which room Eve is in. I actually would have liked to see this play out. It just would have been kind of interesting to see, but instead, Villanelle just goes right at him, right? She just goes right at him after throwing a couple insults his way and all that. She just goes right at him. They go, they start in some hand-to-hand kind of combat or fighting here. It was actually a really great scene, to me, very well choreographed, I think, as well, and some good action. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of, Villanelle fighting, right? Actually, like, hand-to-hand fighting. She usually always has some sort of weapon or some sort of way of doing things that outsmarts her victim. But in this, they're kind of just even ground, and they only got their hands, right? He even puts down his axe. So, and it also kind of shows his cockiness there too, right? Because he thinks he can just take her out with his own hands instead of the axe. But anyways, so they kind of, are going at one another, of course, until Raymond then gets the best of her, pins her up against the wall, and chokes her. So this was very similar to earlier in the season in the car, where he, got his hands around her neck and was able to really, really get the best of her very fast, very quickly, right? And so very similar to this. And I thought in that scene, it was just because she was injured or sick. But I actually think that Raymond maybe, is stronger than her and more trained than her, actually. I mean, at the end of the day, he is her handler, so you would think so. But anyways, so very similar to earlier in the season, she's pinned up against that wall and he's choking her. So, he has her dead to rights here until Eve comes out, of course, picks up the axe from the floor. Really crazy sequence here. So Raymond teases her, saying she doesn't have the guts to do it, right? She won't actually swing that axe and try to kill me, right? That's what Raymond's saying. And so he just keeps on choking Villanelle. He doesn't even worry about Eve in the background because he doesn't think she'll have the guts. And I like this scene because in every other, cliche spy movie or the way, these movies go, oh, he would have turned around and then Villanelle would have hit him from behind and whatever, right? They avoided that cliche, and this was so realistic. It's like, of course Raymond would think that she would just not have the guts. He'd just keep choking Villanelle, and once Villanelle falls down, then he'll go kill Eve, right? So I really enjoyed this sequence. So Villanelle trying to encourage Eve, and she finally throws the axe, hitting Raymond in the back, making him lose grip on Villanelle, kind of going down to the floor, then on his stomach, where this axe is sticking out of his back. Crazy stuff, right? So then we see Eve, she pulls out the axe from his back, and Villanelle holds him up for Eve to deliver the final blow. After a few moments of kind of encouragement from Villanelle, Eve swings the axe, hitting him, and then again, she swings it again, killing him, and we see the blood just splatter everywhere. And obviously killing him then for sure, right? A confirmed kill at this point, and ends up saving Villanelle. So, just a crazy, crazy sequence here. We see Villanelle proud of what Eve did, and we see Eve's reaction right away. On the other hand, she says she's going to be sick, right? She can't handle what she just did, right? But I thought, what a scene. What a great scene, because this builds up to, basically where we've, it's kind of been building up this whole time to this scene, right? Where we'd have to see if Eve would be willing to kill for Villanelle, and also if she would enjoy the killing or not. And in the scene, I think we learned two things. I think she was willing to kill for Villanelle because she could have easily just let Villanelle die there, right, and just run off. Maybe Raymond would have tried to catch up to her, but probably not. I mean, Villanelle was obviously his main target here for personal reasons as well. And so, but she does. She ends up grabbing that axe and she ends up killing him to save Villanelle. But then the next question is, did she enjoy it? No, I don't think she did. And that's what we've kind of teased at throughout the season, of her also having those kind of psychopathic tendencies, or, something like that, or she likes watching the killing, something like that, right? But I think in this scene, it's kind of confirmed that she doesn't enjoy it. And she obviously felt sick after this one. And, it wasn't something that she enjoyed doing. It was something that she kind of had to do. And so that was an interesting thing there. And again, answered those kind of two very main questions to this season. One question, though, is why didn't Villanelle use her gun in this scene? And, of course, that is explained in just the next scene. But at first, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you have a gun in your back, your back pocket, I guess. Or, she slipped in her pants at the back. I'm like, why aren't you using your gun? It all kind of comes full circle, though, right? So Eve and Villanelle then make their way underground quickly as the other men are still following. And then, so they go through this little, underground sequence there. It's, they kind of talk a little bit. Not much happens, though, until they reach this palace location, which was awesome, by the way. The location was really great for this episode and in the way they set up these visuals. But anyways, Villanelle talks about, in the scene, talks about the two of them moving to Alaska, right? And says, she will take care of Eve and that nobody would hurt them there, right? With both of them there, nobody would end up hurting them at this point. So Eve seems to agree with her, and it looks like the two of them are just riding off into the sunset together, right? Happily ever after kind of thing. Two of them, just going off together, going to Alaska and whatever, right? And that's the way we see Eve a little hesitant, but it's not like she's saying no yet, right? But then it all unfolds because we see that Villanelle pulls out her gun as birds kind of fly by, and Eve notices right away, questions why she didn't use the gun on Raymond, right? Why did she had this gun the whole time? Why didn't she use it? And of course, that was my question in the scene before. And I thought, oh no, like, is that a writing mistake? Nope. It comes full circle here. And Eve figures it out. She says, you wanted me to do it. And Villanelle says, I wanted you to know how it feels. How did it feel? So of course, Villanelle trying to see if Eve also feels the same as she does, right? And Eve answers, what did she say? She says wet. So that was interesting, and not quite the reply I was expecting, but not a reply that really confirms that she enjoyed it or anything like that, right? And that's kind of what Villanelle was looking for there. But anyways, so this kind of all turns the whole scene here, is that Eve, at this moment, I think, recognizes again, no, she is a psychopath, right? This is reality. She purposely didn't use this gun to get me to kill him. And, and she kind of comes back to her senses here and realizes who Villanelle really is. And then that really affects the way the rest of the scene plays out, right? So Villanelle tells her that she's proud of her for what she did and that they can be safe now together. But Eve instead says she needs to go home, not run off with Villanelle. And so this was kind of the scene, or the sequence where she says, no, right? Let's stop this kind of dream sequence here. Let's get back to reality. I gotta go home, right? So Eve tells her that she's not scared anymore like Villanelle wants her to be, which is a massive change from what we have seen throughout the season. We've seen her trying to act like she's not scared, but we know she has been. But at this point, I really believe that she's not scared of Villanelle anymore, and I guess she has reason to, right? As Eve starts then to walk away, Villanelle says that she wanted this. She wanted them to be together, or at least that's what Villanelle thought. Eve shakes her head at her, right? Like, no, this isn't what I wanted. Villanelle says, but you love me and I love you. This was just a crazy sequence and some great writing here. Eve says no, as she doesn't even understand what love is. Again, coming back to those senses and realizing Villanelle doesn't even, she doesn't even feel this, right? She doesn't even know what this feeling is. And so Villanelle responds, "I do, you're mine." And that was the title of the episode this week, of course. Eve tells her no, right? So Villanelle tried to kind of really try to get to her and say, "You're mine, like we're together now," and Eve refusing to agree to that. And so then Villanelle suddenly reacts and says, "I thought you were special." This is where the whole thing turned, right? We see Villanelle's face here, very similar to the Constantine one earlier, like I said, where she kind of completely twists here, and instead of feeling emotional and trying to play it off, she just her face just totally changes, and this speaks to Jodie Comer's performance, and she said, "Well, I thought you were special," right? It's not about love anymore, or I don't love you. It's, "Well, I thought you were special, though," right? And so then, obviously, she kind of snaps back. So Eve says she's sorry to disappoint her and starts walking away. And as she turns her back and walks away, Villanelle holds up her gun and shoots Eve in the back. Crazy stuff, right? To me, this wasn't actually that surprising the way this scene played out. I knew right when Eve started walking away and we zoomed in on Villanelle, I'm like, oh no, right? This is not going to be good. She's going to get shot. So then we zoom out and we see Eve lying there on the ground as Villanelle walks away right around the corner, right? Just absolutely crazy sequence here, right? It's like, what the hell? Is Eve even still alive at this point? Crazy stuff, right? Crazy stuff. So, to think we still got a third season to go. What a twist, right? What a twist. And I do think that Eve is possibly wounded in the same place that Villanelle was from the stabbing, and whether Villanelle actually purposely did that. I will say in this scene, I don't think that Villanelle went for a kill shot here. I think she did actually just try to wound her at this point, and we'll have to see then where the bullet wound is, because let's be honest, Eve is still alive. They wouldn't kill her off here in this scene, especially because there was a season 3 already confirmed and it's renewed. So I don't think Eve is obviously going to die here, but we'll have to see what kind of injury she sustains, and if they do kind of a redemption arc again, like they did Villanelle in this season, for Eve to recover and maybe, get back to health and all that stuff. So we'll have to see whether or not they play on that and make the wound in the same place as Villanelle did with the stab wound. So a really good parallel here in this finale ending to what last series was as well. So again, I just want to say a similar reaction here in this scene to when Anna denied Villanelle. Anna, I guess, is how they pronounced her name there. Where we saw Villanelle shot her too when they found, when she found her apartment and went back to her. And so this was just, I think, a very similar reaction to that. Although I don't think she obviously killed Eve in this scene, but it's kind of that, frustration, I guess, for her. And she said something similar to "I thought you were special" as well in that scene in season 1 when she killed Anna. So anyways, a very parallel here, a lot of parallels drawn within this scene for Villanelle and Eve. Alright, so in terms of a rating for this episode, I'm going to give this one a 4.9 out of 5. Outside of maybe not getting kind of confirmation on Hugo to see whether he was alive or dead, just feel like that was kind of a loose ending. And then also we didn't see Nico in this one, and I thought maybe that would be addressed and maybe him and Eve would have some sort of exchange in this episode. But other than those two things, and maybe a couple other small things in this one, I thought it was nearly perfect. I just thought this finale was great, right? A packed finale, though, at that. A lot of stuff happened in this one. A lot of insane moments here. A lot of tension. Really great suspense in some of these scenes. Just really great. I mean, I feel like they addressed every kind of big thing, and really that Hugo and Nico were the only loose ends that they left at the end of this season. So really crazy stuff. And also, I'd love to get your thoughts again of whether or not it's better than season 1. I still think that season 1 is maybe still more surprising to see how Eve was able to stab Villanelle in the finale episode. In this episode, I felt like it was just more of, it was kind of a logical development here for this to play out this way, where season 1 was kind of more shocking. But anyways, I thought both episodes were really great, so I'd love to get your thoughts on that one. So anyways, the Eve and Villanelle scene in the ending was a great conclusion to the season. again, like I said earlier, really answered those two key questions that have been following the entire season so far with Eve and Villanelle too, and it really showed that relationship between the two of them kind of come to its head, and really put Eve in this situation of, well, you know, you're either going with Eve and going to Alaska together, or you got to go home, right? And she was kind of faced that with that reality for the first time in a while, or at least in this season, and so at that point, she kind of came back to reality and made that decision. And so it was very interesting to see and put that character, Eve, in that position finally in that scene. And then to see Villanelle do what she did, it's just kind of a logical reaction to this, which wasn't actually that surprising, but very satisfying for this entire story and build-up that we've had the entire season. So really, really great scene encompassing all of that, right? The humor in this episode was also really great, landed really well, especially that scene Villanelle confronts Raymond, right? She said, you know, I bet your kids are ugly or something like that. A really kind of funny line there, and there was a lot of other great humor in this episode, especially with Eve and Villanelle a little bit when they're walking underground there. So really liked it, and that was a little bit of a critique that I had in some of these episodes this season, where I thought it wasn't quite as crisp or quite on point as season 1, but this episode they really did well, and this episode was written by the new showrunner, Emerald Fennell, and she did a great job with this one. And is Hugo dead? That is a really great question, and I hope we find out early in season 3. I'm going to guess that he's alive, but he's going to be pretty badly injured. But we'll have to see what happens and whether or not we'll find that out in Season 3 and how long we have to wait to see. So, anyways, really looking forward to that. Favorite character for this one, I'm going to go with Eve, of course, played by Sandra Oh. Again, that ending scene really summarized, encompassed everything that they've been developing for this season for Eve. And again, that moment of her kind of coming back to reality here, and that relationship or that fascination with Villanelle is you know, kind of put on hold at this point, right? Where she kind of comes back to reality and says, no, I'm not going off to Alaska with you, right? And so it's just a really nice scene there, and it was really great. By the way, the acting for Sandra Oh and Jodie Comer in that final scene was insane. I mean, that was amazing. So Sandra Oh's coming off the Golden Globe for last season. She was nominated at the Emmys. I'm expecting Jodie Comer to be nominated this year at the Emmys. I'm really rooting for her, and we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if both of them get nominated, even one of them wins. They do a really great job in this show, and they definitely deserve all the credit. So anyways, guys, that just about do it for my review of Killing Eve Season 2 Episode 8. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for the support on the reviews this season. I really do appreciate it. And also the channel in general. I can't thank you guys enough for that. But anyways, that just about wraps up Season 2 for Killing Eve. Really enjoyed this one. Not as good as Season 1 for me, but it was still a really great follow-up to what was a really great season. I mean, they set the bar very high, and it's hard to match that with a sophomore season. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you then in my next review.
There's something about the way you are that makes me